You're not too quiet. You're not lost in your head. And you're definitely not weird. You're just seeing what others refuse to look at. There's a type Jung described that barely fits into this world, not because it's broken, but because it's built for something deeper. The introverted intuitive. If that's you, you already know. The real world feels shallow. Small talk burns your energy. You walk into a room and feel the tension before anyone says a word. You meet someone new and sense a storm behind their smile. You don't look at life, you perceive it, as if your inner compass is tuned to signals no one else even notices. But here's the catch. This is a gift that comes with a heavy cost. If you enjoy this type of content, don't forget to like and subscribe button. The world you live in, this fast, loud, result-obsessed machine, doesn't value the invisible. It wants proof, numbers, certainty. You show up with symbols, hunches, feelings that don't fit into spreadsheets, and the world shuts you down. So you learn to shut up. You stop sharing what you feel. You tell yourself no one gets it anyway. You isolate, drift into your own visions, and start building a quiet, rich, internal universe. And at first, it's beautiful, sacred even. But if you stay there too long, it becomes a prison. That's why Jung said this is the hardest type to understand, even by themselves, because the very thing that gives you insight can also make you disappear. Your mind is like a cave full of ancient symbols, but if you never bring those symbols out into the world, they start to control you from the inside. You're not misunderstood because you're wrong. You're misunderstood because you speak the language of what hasn't happened yet, and the longer you silence it, the louder the chaos gets inside. At some point, you stop trying to explain yourself. You've seen the look people give, confused, dismissive, politely nodding as if you're speaking a language they forgot existed. So you retreat, bit by bit, not in anger, not in drama, but in quiet surrender. You tell yourself it's fine. I'll just keep this to myself. This doesn't need to be said out loud. They wouldn't get it anyway. But here's what Jung warned, and most people ignore. When an intuitive introvert stops expressing their inner world, the inner world stops being a gift. It becomes a threat. See, your psyche is not passive. It's not just a storage room for images and feelings. It's alive. And when those inner images, those dreams, symbols, gut feelings, archetypal patterns, don't find a way out, they don't disappear. They grow, and not always in ways you control. At first, it's subtle. You feel off, maybe drained, maybe anxious. You avoid people more. You lose interest in things that used to bring you clarity. Then the dreams get stronger. You can't explain your moods. Your thoughts loop in spirals. You're not navigating the world. You're swimming in your own fog. What once felt like intuition becomes obsession. What once was insight becomes noise. Jung saw this happen again and again. When the symbol doesn't get translated into words, into art, into action, it turns against you, not out of cruelty, but out of pressure. A psychic truth wants to be born. If you don't birth it through expression, it devours you from the inside. You're not depressed. You're full of meaning that's suffocating in silence. So if you're in that phase, isolating, spiraling, feeling like no one gets it, don't run further inward. That's the trap. It's not about finding someone who understands you. It's about giving shape to what you understand. There's a shift that happens, quiet, invisible, and deadly. After years of being ignored, misunderstood, or dismissed, the intuitive introvert starts to believe something different. Not just, they don't get me, but I'm special because they don't get me. And that's where it begins, the inflation. A word Jung used to describe when the ego fuses with something too big, too symbolic, too powerful for it to handle. At first, it feels like clarity. You see patterns others miss. You feel truths before they unfold. Your silence becomes a throne. Your isolation becomes a badge. You stop questioning yourself, not because you found peace, but because you've placed your identity inside the vision. The archetypes start speaking louder than the people around you. You begin to feel like the prophet, the martyr, the misunderstood genius. You start reading life as if it were a code only you can interpret. And slowly, dangerously, you disconnect from the real world. You reject criticism because They're not ready for what I see. You push people away because they're on a lower frequency. You stop adapting because the world is blind. What you don't see is that the thing leading you now isn't you. It's an archetype, a myth, a symbol that took over the steering wheel, and it doesn't care about your bills, your body, your relationships, or your peace. It only wants to be played out, no matter the cost. This is the point where the intuitive loses themselves not to madness, but to meaning without balance. Jung saw this all the time. Sensitive, gifted people who stopped being curious and started being convinced. Not creators of truth, but vessels for it. Untouchable, untethered. The gift of deep perception becomes a trap when it turns into identity. You're not the message, you're the bridge. Forget that. And the fall is brutal. The mind of an intuitive introvert is like a cathedral full of stained glass windows. Intricate, beautiful, sacred, and locked from the outside. The longer you live in there without opening a door, the more those windows stop filtering light and start trapping it. But there's a key. It's not understanding. It's not validation. It's expression. Jung saw this clearly. If the inner image doesn't find a voice, through words, art, gesture, movement, it becomes toxic. Not because it's evil, but because it was never meant to stay inside. That's the difference between a visionary and a prisoner. Both see something others don't, but one finds a way to translate it. The other drowns in it. Look at Kafka. His writings weren't just literature, they were exorcisms. Twisted visions of bureaucracy, absurdity, alienation, all lifted from his psyche and pinned to the page. Van Gogh, overwhelmed by beauty, pain, and inner storms, turned madness into paint. Every stroke, a scream the world could finally hear. Even Jung himself had to draw out his visions, literally. His red book wasn't a book. It was therapy. A map of chaos he translated to keep from losing himself in it. That's the pattern. When the intuitive introvert creates, they don't just make art. They digest meaning. They turn a haunting into a healing, a weight into a gift. And no, it doesn't have to be perfect. It doesn't even have to be public. A notebook, a melody, a strange doodle you don't show anyone. What matters is that it leaves your system. Unexpressed intuition is like a dream trapped in a body, or it rots unless released. So if your mind feels heavy, it's not weakness. It's potential without passage. Make something, anything, not to impress, not to fix, to survive. Let's be honest. Routine bores you. Repetition drains you. The material world often feels like a distraction from what really matters. You live in symbols, patterns, and meaning. The invisible is your territory. The inner world is where you feel alive. But here's the uncomfortable truth. That's exactly why you need the opposite. Not as punishment, as protection. Jung was clear. The function that's most undeveloped in the intuitive introvert is sensation. The ability to feel grounded in the here and now through the body, through the real. And when this is neglected, your intuition has no anchor. That's when you float, endlessly, drowning in abstraction, overthinking, spinning in visions that never land. The symbol loses its shape, the psyche loses its structure. Suddenly, even the most beautiful insight feels like weight, not wonder. The antidote isn't more thinking, it's touch, sound, movement, repetition, earth. You need rituals, not the esoteric kind, the ordinary ones. Walking in silence, cooking your own meals, cleaning your space, writing with a pen instead of typing, drinking water like it matters, touching something warm, breathing like your life depends on it. These are not hacks. They are psychic anchors. They tell your unconscious, I'm here, I'm real, I can hold what's coming. Without this, even your creative expression can become escapism, a performance for your own ego. With this, the symbol becomes rooted. It no longer pulls you under. It grows through you. You don't need less intuition. You need more gravity. Don't romanticize disconnection. Don't wear chaos like a crown. You're not here to escape the world. You're here to translate what's beyond it into something we can touch. And that starts with you, touching life again. You've seen what others miss. You've felt things they haven't even named yet. You've wrestled with symbols, with silence, with visions that don't belong to this world, and somehow you're still here. But now comes the hardest part, staying true to what you see in a world that demands you deny it. Modern life doesn't care about the invisible. It rewards output, not insight. It wants data, not depth. And if you can't prove it, sell it, or explain it in under 10 seconds, it's dismissed as useless. So what do? You start hiding again. Not because you've lost touch with your truth, but because you're exhausted from defending it. You silence your intuition in meetings. You water down your words in conversations. You live two lives, one internal and sacred, the other external and appropriate. And slowly, your axis begins to wobble. But here's the thing. The individuation process, Jung's entire life work, wasn't about escaping the world. It was about moving through it without losing your inner compass. It's not about fighting the system or converting others. It's about becoming a quiet force, a living symbol of what's possible when someone chooses meaning over performance. You won't always be understood, but you can always be aligned. That's the real power, when you no longer need approval to validate what you feel, when you can hold your vision, even while stacking dishes, paying bills, listening to shallow conversations, without letting them hollow you out. This is what makes the intuitive introvert not just rare, but necessary. Because in a world starving for meaning, your unseen truth, lived silently, consistently, shakes things. Maybe not loudly, but deeply. So don't give that up, not to fit in, not to survive. Because the world may not believe in your vision, but it desperately needs the impact of someone who does. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to click the like and subscribe button.